there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world. Ajde, majkata!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
Okay, now I am recording. It's been too long. I've forgotten all this. Okay. And 3, 2, 1. Macedonian Prime Minister Dimitar Kovacevski was recently in Washington, D.C. for a dog and pony show, a circus, in which he met with a lot of different bureaucrats, got a lot of pictures, and accomplished very little, with the exception of a memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Macedonia on how to fight, quote, misinformation and disinformation, unquote. You can bet what the U.S. means by that and what the Macedonian government will now do about that. Aside from all that, U.S. State Department Mandarin Gabriel Escobar was in quite a few of those meetings and in a Voice of America interview talked about how the U.S. and the Macedonian government are talking a lot about corruption in Macedonia, but from the looks of it, doing absolutely nothing. In that interview, Escobar said that he would not comment on most allegations, and ever since U.S. Ambassador Angela Aguilar started talking about corruption and blacklists late last year, the talk has continued, and we all know this to be true. The U.S. State Department will never do anything that would harm the ruling party, DUI, and its junior party, SDSM. We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin and Jason in Skopje, Macedonia.
It is good to talk to you, Cvetin, because it has been such a long time since we have done one of these.
Yeah, too long.
It was early April, and this is, I think this is, at least the show notes say that this is episode 156. Hard to believe that. And we are recording this on Sunday, the 21st of May. 1 month till summer. Wow.
In what is becoming a biannual podcast.
Oh, we got to correct that. No, we will. We just both been busy, I know. So, all right.
Yeah, I had some little work in the Donbass region. Now I'm free. We can resume recording.
Excellent. Oh well, let's start with the Prime Minister's trip to Washington, and then there was the Escobar interview. Angela Aguilar did a interview with Mia. There was a Senate Foreign Relations Committee on, quote, the Western Balkans, unquote. And I think, we all know the saying about statistics. There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. But if we look at everything that the U.S. government has been saying of late about Macedonia, in particular, it's lies, damn lies in the U.S. State Department. And this whole misinformation and disinformation, basically what that means when Gabriel Escobar and Angela Aguilar and the Prime Minister of Macedonia and others start talking about misinformation and disinformation, what they mean is anything that you disagree with, that we disagree on. If you have one position and we have another position, and you are going with your position, that's because of misinformation and disinformation. And so much of this right now, of course, revolves around the issue of Bulgaria and the changes that the Bulgarian government. By the way, the Bulgarian government, I remember to follow them every now and then or see what's going on there, because their elections were April 2nd, well over a month and a half ago, and they still don't have a functioning government. They've had 5 elections in 2 years, and from all looks of it, they're going to go to a 6th election sometime in the fall or summer, and yet they still managed to find time to talk a lot about Macedonia and to tell Macedonia that it's got to make these changes to its constitution or it's not going anywhere. And then to what I was just mentioning earlier and what is becoming a monologue here, the U.S. government says, well, it's Russian disinformation and misinformation that is confusing the Macedonians, peasants that they are. And that's why they are against these the changes that need to be made. Although I did just see a poll conducted that, no surprise, that 72% of Macedonians are opposed to it, of ethnic Macedonians. And of course the Albanians support it. So let me stop there and let you say a few things. What say you?
Yeah, so there is the big maybe news of the past month or so that we haven't had a podcast is that practically in the last week the U.S. government is openly now endorsing the Macedonian government on two key issues. One is the deal with Bulgaria, and the other is the Bechtel highway contract, in which we're paying the U.S. this U.S. company, which has extensive ties to the State Department. 1.3 billion is the initial price, and this is before counting all the expropriation of land, which is going to be enormously expensive, and so on. So we had the Prime Minister go for a very long visit to Washington, where he only met Blinken, the Secretary of State, and members of Congress of the official visits. But after he returned, and actually while he was there as well, we had Escobar come out with a very open, very heavy call for VMRO to vote for the Bulgarian demands on the constitution, to have the Bulgarian nation included in the preamble of the constitution. And then we had, after Kovacevski's return, we had Angela Aguilar, the ambassador to Skopje, come out very strongly in support of the government on the Bechtel deal. So before that, the embassy would say we did not negotiate this deal. It's a private company. We don't know. We have some concerns about. They're focusing on a minor bit of the contract. Who will do the oversight of the deal? It can become a huge deal if you're planning on stealing a lot of money and you control the company doing the oversight. But it's still relatively minor with all the other problems this deal has. So VMRO has been initially carefully, because they know this is an American company, but then more extensively criticizing the deal, and especially criticizing the Deputy Prime Minister Artan Grubi from DUI, who actually negotiated the deal. And now Aguilar came out and very strongly rebuked VMRO, said, this is nonsense, this is a very transparent deal, it's a great company. They're criticizing from a position of lack of knowledge. So practically VMRO is now under complete attack by the US administration yet again, and the government is fully endorsed. On the other hand, we have some interesting movement in that the European Union has criticized the Bechtel deal.
Oh, good.
They said that also on a non-key issue. So the key issue is that this was a no-bid contract. Because it was a no-bid contract, we could not ask for any EU funding. But the government, which makes the price tag even huger than it was negotiated between Grubi and the American company. So the EU is not attacking them on this fundamental issue, but on the auxiliary laws that Bechtel once changed in Macedonia, for which the government wanted to use a procedure meant for EU-related laws.
The EU flag.
But still it's, yeah.
Right.
But still it's criticism. Still it's notable that the EU is standing up to the government on this issue. Maybe they wanted the deal to go to a European company. And then so basically the EU diplomats here become rich when the EU funds a project and then they can divert it this way or the other. Well, the US diplomats, they do not give you money for infrastructure. They just insist that you hire an American company for the deal. So this is the confrontation. But on the other hand, we had an EU official come to Macedonia, actually a German official, Manuel Saracin. He's their minister for, or some deputy minister for EU affairs or something like that, who very strongly endorsed the Bulgarian demands, calling on VMRO to vote for the Bulgarian amendments to include the Bulgarian nation in the preamble, warning us that the country will collapse essentially if we don't. He said, there is going to be a lot of uncertainty, to put it mildly, if you're raising such an issue of your EU integration, if you're prolonging your EU integration at a time when there is war in Europe. So it was very dark, very gloomy. So we have the EU and the US maybe kind of split on the highway deal, but very united in demanding that VMRO caves on the Bulgarian requests. So it's a lot of pressure on the country at the moment.
It's the same thing going back to the name issue. So a couple of things. The Angela Aguilar, the U.S. ambassador, did an interview with Mia, in which she said, and I wrote this down. She said, quote, "I find it very disappointing that those in the opposition, without frankly all the facts, are criticizing something about which they have no information," unquote. And then she says, one sentence later, that the Bechtel contract Bechtel has been fully transparent. Now, those two things can't be true at the same time. She says that VMRO is criticizing the deal, and that they have no information and they don't have the facts, and that Bechtel has been fully transparent. Those are two completely opposite things. If Bechtel's been fully transparent, then they do have all the facts. The thing for her is that they're criticizing it because the way it was done is wrong. The corruption that she keeps talking about and doing nothing about is rampant. And, of course, again, as I said in the opening monologue, the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Embassy in Cale will never do anything to harm their preferred government, DUI, and its junior partner, SDSM. So that's one. Number two, I watched the Senate Foreign Relations Committee had a hearing the other week with Gabriel
Better
Escobar.
you than me.
Yeah, it's a service I do for you and for our listeners.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So it was with Gabe Escobar and Derek Chalet, whose title I can't remember, but he's a counselor. He's one of these people, a diplomat that had nothing to do, so they gave him a title and sent him over to the Balkans. But U.S. Senator Chris Murray, he's a far-left Democrat from the state of Connecticut, he's talking to the witnesses, asking questions, and he says that Macedonia has to make these constitutional changes because, quote, they are necessary to preserve peace, unquote. Now, so what that means is that if Macedonia doesn't make these changes, another war is going to break out in Europe, I'm assuming, because it makes no sense. Why the constitutional changes have to be made to, quote, preserve the peace? I mean, this is, it's scaremongering, it's sloppy, it's ignorant, etc. And then one of the witnesses was either Escobar or Chalet, whatever his name is, said that Macedonia had to make these constitutional changes to recognize the rights of minority groups in the country and settle their differences with Bulgaria. So number one, it's the same thing with Greece. Greece has a problem with, Macedonia has a problem with Greece. No, Greece had a problem with Macedonia. Macedonia has a problem with Bulgaria. No, Bulgaria has a problem with Greece, with Macedonia. And then Chalet, in answering Murphy later in another question, said that the changes that Macedonia has to make in terms of the constitution in Bulgaria, quote, the changes will unlock the next phase of the EU accession process, unquote. the next phase until something else is required. And as we saw from the Bulgarians, who still don't have a government the other week, are talking about new, it was the vice president of Bulgaria, I forgot her name, was saying, hinting at the one who looks like Dr. Zayas from Planet of the Apes, that more changes, other changes are going to have to meet, other requests are going to be made. And so, it's this two-pronged front from the U.S. government and the Macedonian government to, number one, make these changes. And the timeline, I think, is what? This fall, that September, October, that changes theoretically need to be made?
Amendments are being written up, and they will be submitted to Parliament in the summer.
How about
I don't know it.
Ask for the people.
They're not telling us, so they made up like a 20-member group, all SDSM loyalists, a lot of Albanians in the group, to prepare the amendments, even though we have had, there is a blueprint to include a minority in the constitution. We have a bunch of minorities. That's why Bulgaria demands this. They say that that's the principle in Macedonia, that's how it works, and you have to do it for the Bulgarian nation as well. So this would not require 20 people. It would require just the clerks of parliament to write it up. Maybe that you need to have some kind of like a historical justification for the request to include the Bulgarians as well as Croats, Montenegrins, possibly Jews and others. This always leaves open the possibility that Bulgaria will ask for something more. At this point, they haven't said that they want something extra on top of the usual explanation for the minority in parliament. It says there is the citizens of the Republic of Macedonia, the Macedonian people, the parts of the Albanian, Turkish, Serbian, Roma peoples, blah, blah, blah. And you just add, after the Roma or the Vlachs, you just add the Bulgarian people, the Croatian people, a part of the Croatian, the Bulgarian people. And then there is one other element within the body of the constitution where you have to mention them, but it's just a word. It's not an extensive change. I have heard Bulgarian politicians say the Bulgarian organizations in Macedonia ask to be included in this process. They say it only makes sense since you're talking about this. The government is ignoring them at the moment. Bulgarian politicians have said that the changes need to be more extensive, but haven't pushed this issue and time is running out. Does this mean that, I don't know, they ask for the change of the, a special mention of the Bulgarian nation where we discuss, I don't know, dealing an uprising in the preamble or the history of Macedonia in the preamble to accentuate that. Maybe they ask for, mention the Bulgarian kingdom of Tsar Samuel and some, in such phrasing, to have a bigger grasp on the constitution. Then there is a possibility that on the Macedonian side, we ask that some guarantees are put in the preamble, like to offset the inclusion of the Bulgarians. But this also hasn't been made in detail, what this would be, in what way we would emphasize the role of the Macedonian nation in the constitution, and would the Albanians even agree to this? And then there is, they obviously rejected Mickoski's idea that Macedonia is named the nation state of the Macedonians and the others are named as minorities. Mm-hmm. And of course, the Albanians may ask that in the constitution, there is full bilingual model, that it says that the official languages are the Macedonian and the Albanian, not the Macedonian and the language spoken by 20% of the population were applicable in municipalities. So the Albanians want the Albanian language mentioned in the constitution. So it's possible that a lot more will be done in the constitution, in this round of constitutional amendments. I just don't see that there is enough time, because this needs to be in Parliament in summer so that pressure can be put on VMRO to maybe see if they would vote on this by November, when Albania is supposed to open accession talks. If we remain blocked, then Albania begins accession talks on its own. Mm-hmm. But there is a huge escalation in relations with Bulgaria, in verbal escalation. So something is happening, and it's happening on our part now. So we had our government, our police stopped Bulgarian member of European Parliament Andrei Kovacev from entering the country. He was going to go to a memorial of Bulgarian soldiers. Practically, it's a famous division that was made up mostly of Macedonian recruits and, of course, Bulgarian officers, some Bulgarian soldiers, near Strumica. So he wanted to cross the border together with a businessman who has been funding all these clubs in Macedonia that we are now demanding they change their names because of the Nazi ties of the people they named them after. We stopped a member of the Bulgarian parliament from crossing the border, one of the nationalist party, Vatrajdinia, during the Goca Delchev honoring incident in February. But stopping a member of the European Parliament is a big deal. And especially Kovacev he is very outspoken on Macedonia, but he's not seen as a nationalist in Brussels. He's actually very well regarded there. He's part of the conservative centrist movement. And, they have been in charge of the commission. So a lot of people stood up for him. It's not like you're preventing Angel Jambaski from crossing the border. That would be no issue.
Who literally was fined for giving the Nazi salute in the European Parliament. So
he was waving at somebody.
Yeah, right.
He said. But this is a big deal. This is a big escalation. He managed to get serious people in Brussels to protest, and initially he blamed Oliver Spasovski, the interior minister, who is running for president, and he wants to build up like a tough on Bulgaria image in the process. And then he blamed Pendarovsky, who is obviously also running for president for the same party ticket. So that was an interesting moment. And then in Reykjavik, in Iceland, where Kovacevski and Jotova went, Jotova I think she made some pretty mundane comments. It wasn't, the usual position of Bulgaria and Macedonia. Change the constitution, you will not join the EU. And then Kovacevski said this is as bad as what Russia says about Ukraine. Obviously it's not as bad as what Russia does to Ukraine, but he made this comparison, which, some from SDSM have been making since the start of the war, and it's really outrageous. It's really, really out there. The Moldovans also say that, or Romanians say that Moldovans are Romanians. Germans obviously would say that Austrians are Germans, and so forth. So it's not like you have to go to the comparison that this is just like Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine. It's really... So I don't know what they're up to, but it's a huge escalation on one hand. On the other, they're saying we have to accept these demands, we will implement them. VMRO needs, so they're going both hot and cold with Bulgaria. Our government is.
What's the phrase in Macedonia? Sitting on two chairs. So.
Na dve stolici, but we don't. Yeah, we use it actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Sitting na dve stolici.
Yeah. Well, which is kind of like kind of related to that. I noticed there was a tweet from the U.S. Embassy that said on Sunday, May 21, which happens to be today, the U.S. Embassy's Security Office and North Macedonia's Ministry of Interior will be conducting joint security, yada, yada, yada. And in the second paragraph, it says, this exercise is part of our regular security and safety trainings with the Macedonian Ministry of Interior. Again, sitting on two chairs. They say, in the first paragraph, they say North Macedonia's Ministry of Interior. In the second, they say the Macedonian Ministry of Interior, which is correct. It's the Macedonian Ministry of Interior. So, I've been beating my drums about it.
According to the treaty, it should be the North Macedonia. All government institutions should be North.
So you're saying that the U.S. Embassy is violating the Prespa Treaty?
Yeah, they said Macedonian, yeah.
Well, but then the other thing is, and I pointed this out to you the other day, but I'm going to bring it up here in this podcast for our listeners. On the U.S. Embassy website, in the upper right corner where you have your language options, it's got English and the word English. And the next one is Makedonski jazyk, which is Macedonian language, correct? And the next one is Skopje, which is, I believe, just means Albanian. So why do you have to have the word language after the adjective Macedonian? You don't have... the first one is an English language, and then Makedonski jazyk, and then Skopje language, whatever language is in Albanian. It's... the word language is inserted there just for Macedonian. And it's kind of like, people, make up your minds. Which way are you going? It's kind of like you just mentioned, hot and cold. It's something... Is it the water that people are drinking over there that's really confused people? I don't know. It's something's gone wrong. Everybody's gone mad. But anyway,
the embassy decided that the language is the one thing they will stand up for.
And identity.
No. Macedonian identity, no.
They don't. But they talk about. Okay, yeah. So.
No, they will say, okay, we support your identity, but in the sense that we allow that. We ask that you accept the Bulgarian demands that you redefine the meaning of the word Macedonian so that it means originally Bulgarian.
Right.
But then we will give you the empty word. The word means nothing anymore. Like with the Greece Treaty, we accept that the word means ancient Greek, and that Macedonians, to the extent that we are Slavic, have no right to that word, but we'll let you use the word. Right. So we empty out the word of any meaning, but we will give it to you afterwards.
That's mighty wide of them.
So, and then Zaev invented a new law, a new holiday, which celebrates the Macedonian language, but celebrates its establishment as an official language. So if you want to prove that you speak a very old language, possibly the oldest the oldest written Slavic language, obviously, because Slavic literacy originated in Macedonia, you would go with a date a millennia ago, right? You will go with one of the the translations of the Bible in Slavonic or something, and say this is when we celebrate the Macedonian language. But if you celebrate a day in 1945 or something, when the Communist government declared that the Macedonian language is official, that's entirely in line with what the Bulgarians are saying, that you made up a language in 1945. And the embassy is jumping on this and say, oh, we celebrate your language on this great holiday, which you just invented 3 years ago. And then all the diplomats annoyingly go on Twitter, and this time they were saying some stupid proverbs in Macedonian. We responded with some other proposed proverbs, like the one where you don't raise your head against the Turk, or he will chop it down, so that you have to be silent and cowed, and that best exemplifies Macedonia's relationship with the U.S., or the U.S. treatment of Macedonia at the moment. So this is the only thing they would support us on. Everything else is Albanians need to run the government. We will take your money for the infrastructure, your military, all your weaponry goes to Ukraine. Foreign policy, Albanian dominated. We determine what it is. You accept everything we say, and no sovereignty to speak of. Maybe a little bit of cultural autonomy and even that is very limited, depending on which neighboring country raises an objection at the moment.
Well, that and you will celebrate, since today's May 21 and we're coming up on quote-unquote Pride Month, you will, the part of your culture will now include celebrating, whether you want to or not, Pride Month and everything else. I saw, and then let me mention this, and then let's get back to that memorandum of understanding. Aguilar's tweet on May 17, which to me is Norwegian Constitution Day. I celebrate that. But for them, she said, commemorating #IdaHobbit. I literally had to look that up. I had no idea what IdaHobbit is. IDAHOBIT. But obviously today with the LGBTQI+ and parliamentary caucus. And then this quote-unquote pride flag is new to me, because it's got the standard colors. Then it's got this...
Did you not update your pride flag?
No, I don't know what this is. I think part of this is trans, but then there's a yellow circle on the far left. I don't know what this is anymore. It's just so confusing, because they keep adding to it. It's although I think the Babylon Bee did a thing that they updated it with a G on it to include groomers. But going back to the misinformation and disinformation and the damn lies in the U.S. State Department. So the Prime Minister signed with James Rubin the Memorandum of Understanding on fighting. Let's see. The memorandum says, quote, the memorandum which, quote, will enable closer cooperation in the increasingly vital effort to combat misinformation and disinformation, protect democratic processes, and build resilient information ecosystems, unquote. So what that means is that the State Department will now even more so than it has already done, State Department and the embassy on Kale will dictate to the Macedonian government what is misinformation and disinformation, and of course hate speech, so-called hate speech, which doesn't exist.
There was a serious attempt by the government to introduce very draconian hate speech laws after Zaev had this famous interview with those Russian pranksters who pretended to be Poroshenko.
Oh, yeah.
But that stopped. That was, I don't know why they gave up on the idea. But yeah, this is the second attempt. They want to make any criticism of this process in Macedonia of undermining our sovereignty and national identity as Russian dictated. That
right.
If you oppose any of this, you're for Russia.
Right. So if you the way it works. So this is what the message from the U.S. Embassy and the U.S. State Department is. If you oppose the changes to the Constitution that Bulgaria is demanding, you stand in the way of Macedonia's European integration process. That makes you, well, first of all, you're a hater, a bigot, and a peasant. But then you are also actively working against Macedonia's sovereignty. I mean, it's the word Orwellian is overused, I know, but it is simply Orwellian. It is, you cannot, you can have your own opinion as long as you keep it to yourself and in that little thing on the top of your body, your cranium. But God help you if you voice it. Again, especially God help you if you're a member of the opposition and you voice it, etc. So that's the first step. The next one will be, of course, as I mentioned in my most recent column, cracking down on quote unquote so-called hate speech. So you won't be able to call Dylan Mulvaney the guy who thinks he's a trans woman, who's the influencer who's failing fabulously, to use a word that he would use. You can't call him a man, even though he's a man. He's a flamboyant gay man. But that'll be the next step in Macedonia is things of that nature. So, and since, of course, this, I would be curious, and let's, after off podcast here, let's see if we can track down this memorandum of understanding. Because if it's all about, being open and transparent and all that crap, I shouldn't say that. It's not crap. Yeah, it is. It's crap. Then that memorandum of understanding should be available for everybody to see. Correct?
Yeah.
So, I doubt you've seen it.
I would imagine.
I doubt it's going to be made available. Here's the other thing. The MOU states. Let's see. That there will be, quote, cooperation between the two NATO allies in the fight against the manipulation of information, unquote. So there's going to be a fight, and so expect a fight. You've been warned. This is what the U.S. government, together with its pawns in the Macedonian government of DUI and its junior partner SDSM, will be doing it. Fighting against letting you say what it is you think, especially if you're a member of parliament from the opposition.
Yeah. I don't know what I mean, there are bigger games around us, and they're going to be. It's actually in the past few weeks there were several clear indications of where things are going. We had, a Serbian politician come out with a statement which is, mentioned often on this podcast. That the offer put before them is that they accept to give up on Kosovo and on their strategic alliance with Russia, security arrangements, energy arrangements, access to agricultural markets, etc. And in exchange, they will get, he used the term, something of Macedonia, nešto malo, so a bit of Macedonia. He did not, so maybe he implied like a triple partition of Macedonia, Albanian, Bulgarian, Serb, or, the Albanians take their slice and then the rest goes to Serbia, if they're good boys. He didn't specify which parts exactly. And then, of course, Montenegro, maybe sea access, and half of Bosnia, which they consider their own. And they had these horrific incidents in Belgrade and near Belgrade. So when a bunch of children were killed in a school shooting, an American-style shooting there, and then the next day, a person with a gun, with a rifle, attacked his village, killed also a dozen people, and now there are huge protests, colored revolution style, obviously supported by the U.S. embassy there. We've seen the blueprint. They're building up on these horrific killings. So they're practically saying that if we accept the deal, we get half of what we had in Yugoslavia, maybe. But we have to be loyal soldiers to the U.S. And if we don't, obviously the alternative would be regime change, maybe further loss of territory, unrest in the remaining Muslim parts in Serbia, in the Vojvodina maybe, etc. And then there is a Bulgarian politician, Karakachanov, we kind of forgot about him, the former leading nationalist.
Right.
Now he has lost his position to Kostadinov, who also said that one war he would go to, he would join, is if things started in Macedonia. And he said they've had their brains washed, but they're still our compatriots, our brothers. So, indications on both sides that Macedonia is up for grabs. It's on the menu of whatever is happening in the region, and not sitting at the table as a NATO member and making decisions about its own future. But that bigger players include the Albanians, the Serbs, maybe the Bulgarians, and that we are here to serve as an item for exchange between them. And even these the movements of the U.S. Embassy here, the demands made by Washington are all should be seen in this light. I don't see any other purpose to all these movements.
I still don't think that Macedonia is going to be physically split.
Doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
This would be like influence, cultural, economical. You would know which bank, which phone operator, which intelligence chief is in charge of your. It's very difficult to partition Skopje in this regard, but we would know which part of the country we live in, if and when this happens.
That's very Chi-Com, Chinese communist. When I say that, in that it the all-knowing elite or state or whatever you want to call it that has that much control, which I shouldn't be too surprised, because the tactics used by the Chinese Communist Party and the tactics used by let's just call them by Davos man, whether it's the State Department or the European Union or whoever, are all very similar, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I had on here in the notes our old friend Nikola Dimitrov, who has a new political party called Solutions.
Yeah.
And I just
causing problems to your solutions. It's because he solved the problem very well, and
I'm surprised he didn't call it the final solution. I just noticed that he was he was in Tallinn, Estonia, at the Lennart Meri conference, talking some blather. He's actually, I'm surprised he manages to reinvent himself and stay relevant. Not in Macedonia, of course. He's persona non grata in Macedonia, but he still jet sets around all the think tank conferences and things like that. I'm not sure who's paying for all that, but or maybe he stole enough money.
Well, he's precisely no. It's an international project. He had Philip Ricker endorse him very early in the project, and this indicates, again, in line of what we were discussing, he was the principal supporter of the theory that if one EU member state has objections, and these include Macedonian national identity, we have to accept everything they say. This was with Greece, with regard to Greece, because we are weaker, they're stronger, they will block us forever, time is not on our side, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And now that Bulgaria came up with, similar type of demands, historical national identity requests backed up by their EU membership. He says, absolutely no, this is outrageous, how dare you? And this indicates very strongly that this is the option, it's possibly even option A before the country, that we are part of this Albanian-Serbian delineation in the Open Balkan project. By the way, Alexander Soros is again in the region today. He comes here every other week. He's a principal supporter of this idea that the non-EU member countries, Bosnia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Kosovo, Serbia, Albania, are lumped together in a economic zone. But recently, even Escobar had to loudly deny that this is also meant as a political project, and if he had to deny it, it means that it's probably a lot of it is true. So that Macedonia is joined in this group, and then within it, we will know who belongs where, which city, which neighborhood belongs to which side. And then the other option is that we begin formal EU accession talks. There is no need then to lump us with the Open Balkan, with Kosovo, Bosnia, who would be lagging behind. Then we, Albania, Serbia, Montenegro, advance to the EU. But for us, specifically, the request will be to adopt the Bulgarian national identity in Macedonia, and then this soft partition of the country will be between Albanians and Bulgarians. These are the two options. And Dimitrov was initially supportive, theoretically supportive of the one that we have to join the EU and accept everything anybody requests from us for membership. And now he supports that we need to stand aside from the EU, that we need to find our own way, our own path, and that leads us directly to Serbia and Bulgaria and Albania.
Yeah, well, he's
Enrique works for the Albanians now, so he would probably prefer. Riker works for the Albanian, through Madeleine Albright.
Well, what's his actual job and title now? And I know we talked last time about doing a special podcast of former U.S. officials and where they are and how they're profiting off of all this. But where is he again? Oh,
something in the Albright Institute.
Ah, okay, all right. So
the Madeleine Albright group, which is a business and a lobbying group.
Business, think tank, lobby.
They have investments.
Yeah, they all these groups become. And I've been meaning to write an article on this. I mean, how take for one example that just immediately comes to mind. Well, actually, look at Jamie Rubin. So Jamie Rubin is with the State Department now. At one point, he was with NATO. For a long time, he was married to Christiane Amanpour, the CNN chief correspondent. John Kirby is another one. He's back at the White House now. Before that, he was at the State Department. He was also in the U.S. military. He's a CNN analyst, or he was a CNN analyst, when Trump was in power, or I should say in office. So these people just go back and forth between politics, State Department, think tanks, private sector, we could look at where John Brennan.
You can call it private.
Yeah,
sector.
exactly. Yeah. So, it's one giant incestuous pot of filth that they all just keep going back to and then dictating to smaller countries and people and things like that. So, but I've said this before and I'll say it again. You can stand up to him. It takes a little bit of creativity and hard work, but I think you can do it. So, at some point soon, George Soros is going to be dead, and hopefully that'll destroy the equilibrium of his son, Alexander, and throw him off kilter. But and Dimitrov isn't, his party, whatever that is, isn't going anywhere, obviously. So. But actually, since let's see how we're doing, about 45 minutes so far. Let's finish up with DUI, because I see they were in the news recently. So they're trying. There's a split in DUI, which is the ruling party, and they're trying to get rid of 5 of their deputies, I believe, who of course are now complaining about the process and saying it's not democratic. Well, it's DUI. So, and I'm looking for a quote here from Ali Ahmed.
Yeah, they said it's Ahmed.
Yeah, where is it? Oh, yes.
His quote was
our
that-
statute does not allow factions. Every action outside of the statute leads to anarchy. The most democratic option is for the minority to join the majority in its opinion. I mean, this is exactly what the U.S. and the State Department and the embassy and the EU apparatus are saying. You could attribute this quote to Gabriel Escobar. You know, we don't allow factions. Every action outside this leads to anarchy. The most democratic option is for you, Macedonia, to do what we say and join our opinion. So it's just kind of, well, of course it's not democratic. It's a party born out of war and violence and kidnapping and trafficking and guns and drugs and women, especially, and underage girls. I mean, that's what the DUI party is all about. They literally have no ideology. They tried to adopt a green ideology because Kale told them to do that, and it was the in thing to do, and that didn't go anywhere. Well, no, I think they tried to adopt it because they were going to make money off of it, you know, with the wind farms and solar and all that other stuff. First it was cannabis, then it's green. Who knows what's going to be next? So, but anyway, go ahead.
They handled their division in the way that they brought on another Albanian party. They literally bought the largest Albanian opposition party, the Alliance of Albanians, by giving a house to its leader and a house to the deputy leader of the party. Not the deputy, one of the other leaders. They first asked the leader of the Alliance of Albanians to sabotage elections of his own party, to weaken it in a sense, which he did. This removed the previous leader, Ziadin Sela, and the new leader quickly made a deal with the DUI through a businessman who is funded by the government, a businessman who receives a lot of oil contracts. A DUI guy practically bought 2 houses and gave them to officials of this party. So, open, overt corruption. But this protected the government from yet another loss of support in parliament, and includes even more Albanians into the coalition, and makes the share of Macedonians in the government, in the executive, even smaller. Practically, the Macedonians are even with the Albanians in the government at the moment, and after Syria, and we were going to be a minority in the government. The Albanians were going to be majority, but we made changes in a way that SDSM took weaker ministries, gave stronger ministries to DUI, but nominal, at least on paper, the number is equal of Macedonians and Albanians. So, they are effectively the ruling party, and even this faction that appeared in their parties, I believe, out of strength, because they see that officials of the party see that you can get incredible return from SDSM. Whatever you ask for, they will give you. Like public institutions, you can hire your brethren to no end without qualifications. We recently had the newly appointed director of the Metrology Bureau, which I hadn't heard of it. I only heard about a few months ago because they made some deal that favored Artan Grubi, the deputy prime minister, his brother's business. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that we have a bureau which is in charge of measurements. Specifically, in this case, it was measuring whether gas station pumps work properly. Do they pump enough gas? All right. So this institution, and they have a new director of the bureau, and he comes out and says, well, listen, I thought when I was appointed, I'm being appointed as head of the weather bureau, because Metrologia is the name of the bureau he runs, and Meteorologia is the weather bureau. So it's one letter. And he's literally, I'm here, like I thought I'm going to run the weather bureau, but then they tell me it's a completely different thing. I said, fine, sure, I can run this as well, no problem. I mean, this is the state of the level of DUI capture of the state. There is no, you can't even pretend that they're trying to get the best and the brightest.
He
at
has
the job.
no
It's just-
competence in either subject, so it doesn't matter. So either one will work.
Yeah.
So
They're openly
Yeah.
mocking us, openly pissing on us.
wow. Well,
And this is how they run the country. So they're so strong that local chiefs of the party want to try their own thing. This is how they got a
Yeah.
faction. This is my belief
Yeah.
that the faction was born out of strength, not out of weakness. They're so strong. Everybody thinks they should be minister, deputy prime minister.
well, it's at some point though it collapses. I mean, given the amount of crime and mafia style killing within the ethnic Albanian community, not just in Macedonia but in the region, that's always been there. Kind of ebbs and flows, but I think in Macedonia it's kind of on the ascendancy. And I think I tweeted out the other week. It would not surprise me to see some high level DUI dudes, shot in a mafia style killing, because when you've got this amount of wealth and power up for grabs, and more people want it, and there's competition for it, and some people are losers, then that's how those things happen. I mean, the reason Ali Ahmeti is started a war in Macedonia was because he was one of the losers in Kosovo. He didn't get any of the spoils that he thought he deserved from the 1999 Kosovo War. So he said, I see what we did there, and it worked. And the U.S. Air Force was our Air Force. So we're going to start a war in Macedonia, and then I'm going to get the spoils. And that's what he's been doing for 22 years. I already started working on a column for the anniversary, the solemn, the tragedy that was the Ohrid Framework Agreement, and it's called the men of violence are still there, and they've never been judged, they've never been punished. One day they will.
But he just paid 1.3 billion of our own money, the public money, to the U.S. government for a highway that may be built, may never be built. I mean, he just committed. He negotiated this deal, and he's untouchable now. I mean, he's going to have the total support of the U.S. administration here. I mean, all the diplomats now are going to become filthy rich. The clerks in the embassy are gonna get a cut. It's gonna be crazy. They're gonna make millions.
Yes, but
everybody's walking away with
Cvetin,
millions.
as my ambassador so eloquently said in that interview with Mia the other day, and of course I transcribed this, she said, "Everyone will be happy to have a Bechtel highway."
Of course.
Why?
Painted with gold at this price.
As Snowball says, of course Comrade Napoleon wants you to make your own decisions. But what if you make the wrong decisions? Then where would we be? Stupid peasants.
Yeah, the EU ambassador was literally telling us that we don't want to influence your decision making. I mean, I don't even imagine mentioning it. It was at a recent event. He was literally like, I don't even want to mention this. This is your decision. You decide. And then the German official comes and says, "Oh, your country is going to collapse unless you vote for this."
Yeah, Senator Murphy says it's necessary for peace. Well, a pox on all of their houses and their families. A pox.
And they're going to buy a lot of
houses. And a pox on all of the houses that they buy. Oh dear, we're gonna end on a crushing morosity note here. We have to figure out let's see, some good news to end on. Well, I'll tell you what. Preview, since this will drop. I don't know. This will probably drop tomorrow. Today's the 21st. On Thursday the 25th, I celebrate 27 years with Macedonia, and and let me just end on a high note. Macedonia has been a blessing to my life, believe it or not. And when I say Macedonia, I mean the country, but most importantly the people. And I am grateful for my Macedonian friends and family. I am grateful for Macedonia. Facebook reminded me, as it does, of a post I put up 7 years ago from the National Geographic magazine that had a picture of Cvetin and Jason on the cover. And it said in the title of, I can't remember exactly the title of on the cover of the magazine was 100 places that will change your life, you know, and that was Macedonia there. And I still believe that. I still hold firm to that. Macedonia has changed my life for the better, and
I was going to add, not necessarily
for the better. And you know, it's despite all of this crap that we've just talked about and everything else, all the trouble in the world, you know, it's about attitude. And you can choose to be grateful, or you can choose to be ungrateful. I choose to be grateful, despite all this.
Yeah.
So anyway, right? Okay,
that's
good.
the way to go through life. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, hey, let's not do this every 6 weeks. Let's do this a little more often. So
yeah, we really had the stuff pile on.
Indeed.
Here.
So, all right, great catching up with you, and hopefully we'll talk in 2 weeks or less.
Sure thing. Take care, buddy. Bye.